Ladies and gentlemen, you may believe the greatest dangers of the spiritual world are those that make themselves obvious, those that roar, those that shake the very ground beneath your feet. But I tell you, the more subtle dangers are far more effective. The enemy of your soul does not always come at you directly. No, he is far too clever for that. He prefers a quieter approach, a more insidious one. One of his most favored strategies is to work through the people closest to you. He does not need to attack you outright when he can use a friend, a mentor, or even a loved one to whisper doubts into your mind, to lead you astray, or to wear you down with discouragement. The question is not whether this has happened to you, but whether you have recognized it. The adversary does not come with horns and a pitchfork, nor does he announce his intentions with a grand display of darkness. Instead, he prefers to wear the faces you know, the voices you trust, and the hands that have held yours in friendship or love. This is not to say that the people in your life are wicked or beyond redemption, far from it. Rather, they, like all of us, can be unwitting instruments in a battle they do not even realize they are a part of. The most effective deception is not the obvious lie, but the almost truth, the subtle nudge away from righteousness rather than the forceful shove. It is an old strategy, one as ancient as the first temptation. The enemy knew he could not drag Eve into rebellion by force. So he placed doubt in her mind using something familiar, a simple conversation, a seemingly innocent question. Did God really say? He did not need to declare war. He only needed to plant a seed of uncertainty, and the rest unfolded naturally. So it is today. You will not always be attacked with open hostility. Instead, you may hear well-intended warnings that sap your courage, words of concern that plant fear, or voices of reason that discourage faith. The people speaking these words may have no awareness of their role. They may even believe they are acting in love. But the impact remains the same. It is often those closest to us who have the greatest influence over our thoughts. A stranger's insult may be easily dismissed, but a friend's doubt can shake the very foundations of your confidence. A loved one's disapproval can cause you to hesitate on a path you were once sure of. The enemy understands this better than we do, which is why he does not need to work through enemies. He can work through friends, mentors, and even family members. It is not their fault, necessarily. They are simply being used, their weaknesses exploited, their fears turned into weapons against you. Consider the words spoken to you in your weakest moments. Have you ever found yourself filled with resolve, only to have it drained by a passing comment? Have you ever felt faith rise in you, only to have someone you respect cast doubt on your conviction? These are not accidents. When the enemy sees you stepping toward something good, he will do whatever he can to halt your progress. And what better way to do it than through a person whose words you take seriously? This is why discernment is crucial. Not all advice, even from those who love us, is wisdom. Not all concern is rooted in truth. Some voices, even those that have once guided us well, may unknowingly serve as stumbling blocks. This does not mean we must cast people aside, but it does mean we must be vigilant. When someone speaks into your life, ask yourself, does this bring clarity or confusion? Does it encourage faith or fuel doubt? Not all that sounds good is good, and not all that seems wise is truth. Discouragement is one of the enemy's most effective tools, not because it strikes suddenly like a hammer, but because it erodes slowly and persistently like water carving through stone. It does not need to break you in a single blow. It only needs to make you hesitate, to make you question, to make you weary. A person full of faith, courage, and conviction is dangerous to the forces of darkness. But a person who is worn down, who no longer believes in their own purpose, who has allowed doubt to take root in their mind, such a person is easily swayed, easily silenced, and easily defeated. Discouragement can come from anywhere, but it is most effective when it comes from those whose words carry weight in your life. It does not announce itself with obvious malice. Instead, it disguises itself in concern, in practicality, in well-meaning advice. You may hear it from a mentor who tells you not to aim too high, lest you set yourself up for disappointment. You may hear it from a friend who, out of their own fears, warns you against stepping out in faith. You may hear it even from your own heart, whispering that you are not strong enough, not good enough, not wise enough. The enemy knows that if he can make you lose heart, he does not need to destroy you, you will destroy yourself. If he can make you believe that your efforts are futile, you will stop trying. If he can make you believe that your voice does not matter, you will silence yourself. If he can make you believe that you are alone, you will isolate yourself. And in that isolation, in that silence, in that weariness, he gains ground. Some of the most powerful figures in history were not defeated by external enemies but by the quiet erosion of their own resolve. They did not fall because they lacked strength, but because they believed they lacked it. The enemy is not always interested in proving you wrong. He is content to let you believe that you are too weak to go on, too insignificant to make a difference, too broken to be of use. What makes discouragement so dangerous is that it often feels like truth. It is easier to believe in limits than possibilities. It is easier to accept defeat than to continue fighting when the battle is long and hard. And so, little by little, discouragement convinces you to settle for less than what you were called to be. It does not tell you to abandon your faith or your purpose outright. It simply makes you tired. It makes you weary of the struggle. It makes you question whether the path you are on is worth it. But the enemy is a liar. Discouragement may speak with a voice that sounds like reason, but its purpose is to rob you of what you were meant to do. The question is not whether discouragement will come, it will. The question is whether you will recognize it for what it is and refuse to let it define you. The enemy does not need to destroy from the outside when he can weaken from within. Division is his goal, and he pursues it with relentless precision. A house divided cannot stand, a friendship fractured cannot endure, and a community at war with itself will not thrive. The enemy understands this better than we do, and so his strategy is not always brute force or direct attack. Instead, he sows discord, whispers resentment, and magnifies differences. He does not need to turn people into enemies. He only needs to make them distrust one another. The enemy thrives in misunderstanding, in offense taken too quickly, in pride that refuses to yield. He does not come with a sword to cut relationships apart. He merely places a seed of doubt, a moment of suspicion, a feeling of being slighted, and lets human nature do the rest. A careless word spoken in exhaustion, a forgotten act of kindness, an unintended slight, all these can be twisted into something far greater than they ever were. The enemy takes what is small and magnifies it, making it seem unbearable, unforgivable, irreconcilable. Once division takes root, it spreads. It turns allies into adversaries, friends into rivals, and brothers into strangers. It does not stop at individuals. It infects families, communities, and entire nations. The enemy does not care what the source of division is: politics, beliefs, personal offenses, pride, envy, or even simple misunderstandings. As long as he can make people turn against each other, he has succeeded. The tactics are subtle but effective. He encourages people to assume the worst of one another, to read ill intent where there was none, to hold grudges instead of offering grace. He persuades people to prioritize their own egos over reconciliation, to seek to be right rather than to seek peace. He fosters an environment where apologies are seen as weakness and where reconciliation is avoided out of fear of appearing vulnerable. Where unity should bring strength, division brings exhaustion. A person who is alone is easier to attack than one surrounded by support. A group that is fractured cannot stand together against an outside threat. And so, the enemy does not need to launch a full-scale assault. He only needs to make sure that the very people who should be standing together are too busy fighting one another to notice the real battle. The damage of division is not always immediate. It begins as a slow erosion, a quiet cooling of affections, a gradual distancing. By the time the effects are fully felt, the damage is often deep and difficult to repair. This is why division must be recognized for what it is: a deliberate tactic, a calculated move, a strategy meant to weaken, distract, and ultimately destroy. When the enemy sows division, he does so knowing that those who should be fighting against him will instead be too preoccupied fighting each other. The enemy is not only skilled in attack but in distraction. He knows that a weary soul is an easier target than a strong one, and so he does not always seek to destroy outright. Sometimes he only needs to exhaust. One of the ways he does this is by luring you into battles that were never meant to be yours to fight. He knows that if he can keep you constantly engaged in conflicts that drain your strength, demand your energy, and steal your focus, then, when the real battle comes, you will have little left to give. Not every insult requires a response. Not every challenge requires your effort. Not every wrong needs you to make it right. There is wisdom in knowing when to stand and when to step away. There are moments when fighting is necessary, when truth must be defended, and when courage demands action. But there are also moments when engaging is a trap, a diversion meant to consume your strength in places where it will accomplish nothing. The enemy delights in seeing you waste your energy on fruitless conflicts, pouring yourself into battles that do nothing but deplete you. Many of these battles come disguised as noble causes. The enemy knows you are more likely to engage if you believe you are fighting for something good. He will tempt you to take on burdens that are not yours, to fix problems that were never yours to solve, and to insert yourself into conflicts that will only leave you drained. He will make you feel as though walking away is the same as giving up, when in reality it is wisdom. The more entangled you become in unnecessary battles, the less clarity you have for the battles that truly matter. Some battles are waged purely to provoke a reaction. The enemy stirs up conflicts designed not for resolution but for endless contention. These arguments produce no fruit, no growth, no understanding, only division and exhaustion. He is pleased when you are so caught up in proving a point that you forget the greater purpose you were called to pursue. A warrior who spends all his time swinging his sword at shadows will find himself too weary to face the real enemy when the time comes. There is also the battle of personal offense. How often does the enemy tempt people into wasting their strength on bitterness, resentment, and proving themselves right? He whispers that every slight must be answered, every misunderstanding must be corrected, and every offense must be avenged. But in the process, precious time and energy are spent chasing vindication instead of peace. The enemy does not need to bring a great calamity upon your life if he can keep you constantly engaged in meaningless skirmishes. It is not cowardice to walk away from a battle that does not serve your purpose. It is wisdom. It is discipline. It is a recognition that your strength is not infinite, and that some fights are meant for others, or for a greater power than yours to resolve. Choosing where to invest your energy is not surrender, it is strategy. Manipulation is one of the enemy's most effective tools because it operates in the shadows, shaping reality without ever revealing its hand. It does not force, it persuades. It does not demand, it suggests. It does not attack head-on but works subtly, twisting perception until what is false appears true and what is true seems doubtful. Unlike open confrontation, manipulation works best when it goes unnoticed. By the time its victim realizes what has happened, they have often been led so far astray that turning back feels impossible. The enemy does not need to control people outright. He only needs to influence them in small, consistent ways. A person manipulated does not feel coerced, they feel as though they are making their own choices, even as those choices serve someone else's purpose. The tactics used are never obvious at first. A suggestion here, a planted doubt there. An appeal to emotion rather than reason. A carefully chosen word designed to provoke guilt, fear, or obligation. Manipulation often preys on the natural desires of the heart, our need for approval, our longing for belonging, our fear of rejection. It can disguise itself as concern, as love, even as wisdom. A manipulator does not simply command, they weave a narrative, one in which you come to the right conclusion on your own. They may use guilt, making you feel selfish for setting boundaries or for choosing what is right over what is easy. They may use flattery, building you up so that you trust them implicitly, only to guide you where they want you to go. They may use selective truth, revealing only parts of a story to shape how you see a person or situation. The most dangerous manipulations are the ones that appeal to our noblest instincts. The enemy does not always tempt with open evil. Sometimes he lures with misplaced virtue. He will make you feel that to be kind, you must surrender your own convictions. That to be loving, you must tolerate what is destructive. That to be strong, you must fight battles that are not yours to fight. A skilled manipulator can make you doubt your own thoughts, your own perceptions, even your own memories. Manipulation thrives where there is confusion. It seeks to muddy the waters, to make truth seem relative and conviction seem harsh. It turns people against each other, fostering mistrust while appearing to be a voice of reason. It shifts blame, leaving its victims questioning whether they are the problem. The more one engages with manipulation, the harder it becomes to see clearly. The enemy has no need to overpower those he can simply guide like a puppet. He does not need to destroy those he can control. His goal is not just to lead people astray, but to make them believe they got there by their own will. By the time the truth becomes clear, much damage has already been done. The only defense against such deception is discernment, recognizing when words and actions do not align, when motives are hidden behind a mask, and when the voice influencing you is not leading you toward truth but away from it. The enemy's greatest weapons are deception and division, but there is an antidote that renders both powerless: discernment and love. These two forces, when combined, expose lies, heal wounds, and restore what has been broken. Discernment is the ability to see clearly, to separate truth from falsehood, and to recognize when something is not what it seems. Love is the force that holds everything together, the light that drives out darkness, and the power that cannot be counterfeited. Where deception seeks to confuse, discernment brings clarity. Where division seeks to destroy, love rebuilds. Discernment is not merely human wisdom or suspicion, it is the ability to perceive beyond what is obvious. The enemy works subtly, twisting truth just enough to make it seem convincing, using the voices of others to discourage and manipulate. Without discernment, a person is easily swayed by emotion, by flattery, by fear, or by guilt. But when one possesses discernment, they are not easily deceived. They recognize when words do not match actions, when advice is leading them away from what is right, and when a person's influence is not of light but of shadow. Discernment asks, does this align with truth? Does this bring peace or confusion? Does this encourage righteousness or self-indulgence? Discernment alone is not enough. It must be paired with love, or else it can turn into cold judgment, suspicion, and bitterness. Love is what prevents discernment from becoming cynicism. It is what allows a person to see deception without becoming hardened, to recognize manipulation without responding with hatred. The enemy wants nothing more than for those who see through his schemes to become bitter, distrustful, and isolated. But love guards against this, keeping the heart tender even while the mind remains sharp. Love does not mean tolerating lies or allowing oneself to be misled. True love is not blind acceptance but a commitment to truth. Love is patient, but it does not excuse deception. Love is kind, but it does not enable harm. Love forgives, but it does not allow evil to thrive unchecked. The enemy would like people to believe that love is weak, that it must always yield, that it must never confront. But true love is strong, it protects, it stands firm, and it refuses to be manipulated. Discernment without love leads to division, but love without discernment leads to deception. The two must work together, for they form a shield against the enemy's tactics. Discernment keeps love from being naive, and love keeps discernment from becoming cruel. When the enemy seeks to use people to manipulate, discourage, or divide, it is discernment that recognizes the attack, and it is love that responds with wisdom rather than bitterness. With these two, deception cannot take root, and division cannot last. A person who walks in discernment sees the schemes of darkness before they can do harm, and a person who walks in love refuses to let those schemes turn them against others. In this way, the enemy's power is broken, and his influence is rendered useless.